Greetings and welcome to AM 560 The Answer. I am Mike Coolidge hosting today in for Dan Proft on this Friday. It is Open Line Friday, and we are going to open the lines. We've already opened them, but we're going to open them again. It's the alphawealthgroup.com talk and text line, which is 312-642-5600. There is something that happened in Washington, D.C., a great piece of legislation last year called the Big Beautiful Bill. Perhaps you remember it. And there was something in there about education. I know Dan's really big on education. Piece from Capital News, Illinois. Diverse interest groups from public school activists and downstate voters to state officials and school boards have pushed for Governor J.B. Pritzker to finally make a decision about the Trump administration's education freedom tax credit. Yet there's been mostly silence from the governor's mansion as Pritzker considers opting into the controversial school choice tax credit, an initiative that is also stalled in a bipartisan state Senate bill 377-6 due to scarce conversations with colleagues, according to chief sponsor Senator Adrian Johnson, Democrat from Buffalo Grove. The tax credit passed under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in 2025 is a dollar-for-dollar, non-refundable federal tax credit for donations of up to $1,700 a year to authorized scholarship granting organizations. Scholarships under the tax credit do not have a cap and are decided by donor organizations. Joining us on the phone right now to dig a little bit deeper into this is Dr. Patrick Graff, Senior Fellow with the American Federation for Children. Dr. Graff, welcome on to Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so I know Pritzker's not the only governor who's kind of dragging his feet here in this education tax credit, but give our listeners your viewpoint on this and perhaps some ammunition to call our state senators and state representatives and the governor's mansion itself and saying, hey, let's get a decision on this there, bucko.
Yeah, Mike, this is really a generational opportunity to improve the educational outcomes for our kids across the country. And honestly, nobody's really talking about it. I'm glad you all have found this and are talking about it. But
yeah,
I have a new report out this week just detailing how many kids could potentially receive a scholarship through this new program. So this was intentionally designed as a broad-based, most kids in the country are going to be able to qualify. We're able to put some numbers to that. Nearly 92% of kids in the country will be income eligible to receive a scholarship through this tax credit. And now it's really about, can we raise the funds through donors who are going to receive that dollar-for-dollar tax credit, and are states going to opt in? So we know 31 states have already opted in. There's more than 30 million kids in those states. But for the 19 states that have yet to opt in, and unfortunately Illinois is one of those, there's 20 million kids waiting on the sidelines to see if their governor and their representatives are going to act for their state to take advantage of this opportunity.
Now, explain how this works with donors and donor organizations. This isn't just tax dollars we're talking about. This is private donors.
Yes, that's right. So the way this works is you as a taxpayer, up to $1,700 you can donate to a scholarship organization. So this is a nonprofit organization. Many of these already exist in every state across the country that give scholarships to kids for things like tutoring, special education services, tuition, coursework costs, if they're taking maybe a college course in high school. Those kinds of scholarships can now be partially funded by these donations to these scholarship organizations that you then receive a dollar-for-dollar tax credit. So instead of sending that $1,700 to the federal government for them to use whatever they're going to spend that tax money on, you can keep it right there in your state, and that $1,700 will instead go to kids who need it for services in your community.
Sounds like a great deal. Sounds like a great idea. What's the blowback?
It's a great deal.
Why are people? What's the argument against this?
Well, I think it's interesting in Illinois specifically. I actually live in South Bend, Indiana, so I'm right across the border here. And, I honestly worry a lot for the school systems in Illinois. Some of the families there might start having some of the same conversations that management of the Chicago Bears are having, which is, why don't we just move right across the state line here and take advantage of the opportunities in Indiana that are open to all families? Indiana's opted in. We have a state school choice program on top of that. And there in Illinois, we have school-age children are no longer showing up to school. I think, I happened to talk about this on another program last year, but I was looking into the kindergarten sizes in Chicago public schools. If you go back to just 2009, there were over 30,000 kindergartners a year enrolling in Chicago public schools, and now it's around 20,000 or fewer. And there's just fewer and fewer kids enrolling in Chicago public schools every year, and so they are massive. They're facing these massive deficits. They see these coming because there's just not kids being born or families wanting to live in these school systems. And with something like this new education freedom tax credit, these scholarships are open to public school, charter school, and private school kids. It's not just that private school tuition. There's so many other uses for it. So, we would love to see, and I think we would encourage the governor there to make good on his promise. He said when Illinois had the Invest in Kids state tax credit program for 5 years, he said if the legislature put something on his desk that he would consider it, and he would look forward to potentially moving that forward. And that was with a state tax credit, where that would be money that wouldn't be coming into the state. This is an opportunity where the state of Illinois, their budget will not change at all if they opt into this program. This is all federal tax credits.
Yeah.
And so this is a huge win for public school students, huge win for private school students within the state, and a huge win for families who would have new options that they otherwise wouldn't have access to.
It seems like a no-brainer. But, of course, we have many people in Springfield without brains who have state senator and state representative in front of their titles. One of the central concerns, reading here from Capital News, Illinois, behind the federal tax credit include the extent to which it will benefit public schools and whether the institutions it benefits will be open to students of all protected groups. In many rural areas, for example, there are no private schools that would be eligible for the tax credit. What do you say to that?
Interestingly, in Illinois, and this is kind of a wrinkle of the tax credit, in Illinois, we believe that homeschool families will also be eligible for their students to receive scholarships for these services. And, what we've actually seen in some of these big school choice states like Florida, for example, where they have over 500,000 students using an education savings account there, so this form of school choice, we actually see a ton of growth of small private schools, particularly in rural areas. Florida has added over 700 private schools in the last 10 years because of the advent of universal school choice there. So when you allow these opportunities to open up, then you see all this demand from families, and so the supply responds. That makes sense. Pointing to the current kind of landscape of schooling, there's so many opportunities for these small schools, some call them micro schools, to pop up in these areas and help families take advantage of educational options that are not there currently. So there's really a broad range of things that will enable families to really serve their kids well.
And last question, standing in the shoes of someone with a kid who could benefit from this, the $1,700, just explain it one more time, if you wouldn't mind. The $1,700 is the limit that a private donor can donate to the program. But as far as someone receiving amount of scholarships, is that limited, or how does that work?
Yeah, very good question. This can be a very confusing part of it, because that's exactly right. The $1,700 is the limit on what a donor can give and receive a federal tax credit for. But that goes to a scholarship organization, and that organization decides what the needs are of the students that they give scholarships to. So they might give one scholarship to one student for $2,000 for a year-long tutoring scholarship, and then another student might receive an $8,000 scholarship in order to go to a private school for middle school. So the range and the amount of the scholarships can truly fit the needs of the kids, and the scale of the opportunity is huge. If you look in Illinois, So if you had 30% of taxpayers in Illinois who have $1,700 in tax liability at the federal level, that would generate nearly $1 billion more for education within Illinois. And, I would venture that these would be much more effective dollars because these are dollars flowing directly to parents and students instead of through the public school bureaucratic morass that often kind of develops around new money. So this is money directly going to families from scholarship organizations. I think that this is a generational opportunity that Illinois can't fail to rise to the occasion on.
Patrick Graff, the senior fellow at American Federation for Children. You said South Bend, Indiana. Is that where you're from? And does that make you a Notre Dame fan?
You're well, I don't want to get in too much trouble here, but yes, I am. I've been here for 15 years. I actually grew up in California, and now my kids are Hoosiers and are going to school here, and most of them actually benefit from the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. So I'm very fortunate to live here in Indiana, and I am a Notre Dame fan. So I'll commit to that live on air here.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know if you heard, but that Indiana school, known for basketball, won the national championship in football last year. Better team than Notre Dame.
We beat them in the playoffs the year before, so we gave them a little, on their way to victory.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us and shedding some light on this. And listeners, call your senators and state representatives and the governor's mansion themselves, or Governor Pritzker's office themselves, and tell them to make a decision on this education tax credit. Thank you so much for coming on Chicago's Morning Answer, Dr. Patrick Graff.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Joe Fallon did something smart. He saved hundreds on auto insurance switching to Progressive. With that money, he commissioned a portrait of himself. Does Joe already know what he looks like? Yes. Do guests know what he looks like? Also yes. But not as art. It's Joe's savings, and if he wants to spend it on a